Hi folks, and welcome to week 6. We are going to be making some present blocks this week. A little bit easier, no foundation piecing in this one. To make these blocks there are 3 separate cutting instructions because there are 3 different size blocks, so make sure that you are referring to the correct cutting instructions before actually getting out the rotary cutter. You can use up bits of fabric that you've got left over from offcuts from previous blocks for this one, as there's lots of different sizes appearing within it. And we are not assembling the 3 at the end into the row. We keep these separate, and that's to do with when we actually put the quilt together and how we get the sections together. The 3rd block, the smallest of the presents, has the added addition of a little piece of sashing on the right hand side and on the top, and that's to help when you come to put the quilt together. Believe me, it is so small you don't actually notice it once it's in the quilt, but it is there and it is within the instructions in order to do that. I'm going to show you how to make one of the blocks. I'm going to make the larger one because it's easier for you to see, and then it's exactly the same to make the others, obviously with the different sizes. So, to make block 6A of Presents Under the Tree, you're going to need, from fabric A, a 2 6/8 by 3 7/8 rectangle, a 2.5 by 3 7/8 rectangle. From fabric F, you're going to need 2 6/8 inch squares and 2 3 6/8 by 2 6/8, and 1 3 6/8 by 2 6/8 rectangle. From fabric E, and mine's changed colour today because I'm working with scraps, we're going to use 2 6/8 by 3 7/8 rectangle and a 2.5 by 3 7/8 rectangle, so they match the fabric A. And finally, from fabric H, we're going to have 2 2 6/8 inch squares. We're going to have 2 1 6/8 by 3 7/8 rectangles and 1 6 1/8 by 1 6/8 rectangle. That's a lot of bits of fabric. Try to keep them organised. I have a habit of mixing up these 2 pieces because they're only slightly different in size to each other. So I'm going to stack them so I keep the 2 bigger ones and the 2 smaller ones together off screen for me. So we're going to start by making the bow, and this is made by making quite a deep flying geese block. We kept it deep so that it sort of gave the illusion of having that sort of chunkier bow in the middle, as normally with a flying geese block, when you sew them together, your seam allowance would take it up to the point. This one actually leaves a little bit without it. When we come to the other presents blocks that are in the quilt, we actually use a normal flying geese block on that, and that's what makes the 2 blocks different to each other. So to make this block, you're going to need to use your fabric F, 3 6/8 by 2 6/8 rectangle, and you're going to need your 2 2 6/8 inch squares from fabric H. Turn those 2 over, and we're going to use a ruler. I just use a pencil because you don't see this, and draw a diagonal line onto your fabric, onto the back. So this is on the reverse of the fabric. We're going to line up one of the squares with the very edge of the rectangle, and we're going to sew along the line that you've drawn. Once you've sewn that line, just make sure that it will flip back, and then we're going to cut the excess away. Now, if you're like me and you don't like to leave any bits of fabric unturned, you can sew another seam along here and cut it off and make yourself a half square triangle. Today I'm just going to remove the pieces. So I measured about 1/4 inch from the line that we've sewn, and then we will fold that back. You can press that at this point. I haven't got my pressing mat over here, or you can use your legendary seam roller. We're then going to take the other square, so again with the diagonal line drawn on it, and this time the diagonal line is going from the edge and it crosses over the piece that you have just sewn. You're going to take that and sew along the line that you've drawn again. We bring it back to the cutting mat. There's our line. We've sewn directly along the line that we drew. Again, we're going to measure about 1/4 inch and cut off that excess. And then press that back. And there's our bow. So onto the edges of that, we can sew our 2 side pieces. So for these are from our fabric F. These are the 2 6/8 by 2 6/8 squares, and we're just going to put one on each end and sew it together with a 1/4 inch seam and then press back. So there we go. We've added both on either end using our 1/4 inch seam, pressed them back, and that is the top section of our present block. So now we need to make the actual present. To make this, we're going to be using our fabric A and our fabric E pieces. The piece that goes on the top is our larger piece, which is the 2 6/8 by 3 7/8. So they will be alternate to each other. In between those pieces, we have from our fabric H the 2 1 6/8 by 3 7/8 rectangles, like that. And then on the bottom, it'll be the opposite fabric A to fabric E, and that is the 2.5 by 3 7/8 rectangle. So that's our basic layout. All we're going to do is put them right sides together, sew a seam 1/4 inch along there, flip it back, and then add the bottom piece. So there it is, sewn together with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm now going to put the fabric E right sides together with it and sew that again with a 1/4 inch seam. And there we have it. I've pressed it back and I've pressed both the seams in towards the green, in this case, which is our fabric H. I'm now going to repeat and do exactly the same for the opposite side, but it'll be the other way up. So there we have both sides made identical, seams pressed in towards the centre, and we're ready to add our centre strip. The centre strip will just go right sides together with your block. Now this one looks ever so slightly longer, in which case I'm going to make sure that when I sew this on, I put it so that the longer side is on the bottom. That way the feed dogs will take in the extra fabric, and it should line up again at the other end. So I'm just going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam. And there we go. You can see that there's still a tiny little bit left on the end, but that's okay. The feed dogs have done their work, so I'm going to just finger press that back and put the other one right sides together with it. Make sure that your orientation is the correct way up, and again we're going to sew that together with a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I have sewn both sides together. I've pressed it so that the seams go in towards the centre. That now gives us our present block, so we are ready to add our bow to the top. And again, we're just going to put that right sides together and attach that with a 1/4 inch seam. And there we have it. I've pressed that one up towards the bow, and that is our completed block 6A. The others are identical to make, but they vary down in sizes, and the three of them eventually will join together in the quilt. Hope that makes sense to you. If you've got any questions, please ask them on the Facebook group. Always there, always happy to help. Good luck. Look forward to seeing your blocks online. Bye.